If everyone's ready, I would like to hand you over to Homewood School Brainstrust team.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Thomas Hodgkins. To my right is Mr. Mr. Burns. He would he would like to he would like to start with he would like to do an vet school after his GCSEs. To my right is Mr. Val. She obviously knows a liberal feminist and would like to be a lawyer when she grows up. And next to her is Izzy. She's like a book reader. I did really badly already. She would like to.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
No, we don't.
Sorry,
know.
I'm doing really badly. I think I'll just start. Question 1. Grammar in schools should be abolished. Izzy would like to start. Sorry.
Well, I hate grammar. I genuinely dislike very few things left. But grammar schools or like actual grammar schools?
Grammar schools, sorry.
Why can you both? Yes, I think that grammar schools should be abolished because they belong as part of a system that worked very well when they were set up. But the 21st century is now very, very different to what it was then. And their point is to take children of above average ability and to extend that ability, which is a noble thing to want to do, but they do that by just taking the 11 plus. Middle class parents tutor their child for the 11 plus. If you don't have enough money to tutor your child has a lesser chance of passing the 11 plus. The less money you have, the less tutors you pay for. The less tutors you pay for, the less likely you are to pass the 11 plus. The less likely you are to get into grammar school. That strikes me as a deliberately unfair system. And it wasn't meant to be like that. But I think they have no place in today's society. I think they no longer serve their purpose.
Thank you. Holly, would you like to go next?
Let's go next.
If you're ready. Okay.
Right. A grammar school is the cream of the cream. People agree. The best schools in the country are grammar schools or public schools. But you both have to pay for tutoring. But it makes the school look good, makes the country look good, and it thins out everyone who is going to do the better jobs. You know what I mean? Everyone's going to do. Doctors tend to go to grammar schools because you get higher grades, and it's a better learning environment for people who are cleverer because they don't have pressure to do worse, to be like everyone else. So they have, and it's competitive. Competitive makes you do better because you want to try better, you want to try harder, and you want to just do better in general.
Thank you, Holly. Mercedes, you next.
So the original plan for the 11 plus was the idea that only middle class people would be able to pass it because only middle class people would be intelligent enough to pass. There was a whole, when it first started, they started to rearrange the statistics because there was only a limited amount of boys' grammar school places and a limited amount of girls' grammar school places. So a lot more boys passed simply because there were not enough girls to go. So the boys that passed like below average were given the places that the girls should have been given. But the whole point of 11 plus is setting and streaming. It's the idea that if you go to a grammar school, you would then do your A-levels and go to university. If you go to a comprehensive school, you will do your BTECs, a vocational subject, and then you will effectively not go to university and maybe go on to an apprenticeship. The 11 plus test overall is generally very unfair. So my youngest sister currently is doing tutoring for her 11 plus. One of the questions in her test paper, there was a list of different composers, and it was pick out the odd composer. And an 11-year-old who is not middle class, who does not have enough money to do cultural things to give them cultural capital, will therefore not know the difference between the composers and they will not pass. So it's just reinforcing the fact that middle class people will therefore go into the better jobs.
Thank you, Mercedes. So to quickly sum up, what we've worked out is that it's a good system when it started, but really kind of starts failing in the 21st century with the new need and new changing people. It only helps middle-class people or those of above average. It's creating elitism, is what we've worked out as well, because only some people can do it, especially with that question Mercedes about your sister. I would not be able to do it either. but it also kind of helps get better jobs. Again, teachers and doctors especially, or especially doctors and lawyers and that, go to middle class and grammar schools because it seems better, it looks better on your CV as well. So this question goes both ways, to be honest. If we start with question 2 now, there should be free movement of people in the EU. Free movement of people in the EU has a bad idea for the UK. It's bad for the UK. Sorry. Sally, can you start with me? Adrian, can you start then?
Free movement of people in the EU is an incredibly controversial subject, for good reason. But should people be allowed to move through a continent as though there are no cultural boundaries, no country boundaries between countries? I think they should. Because the whole point of the EU was to foster an idea of community, of preserving your own identity as a country, but also accepting that you still live on the same continent as all these other countries. On a more practical, less idealistic note, it makes travel, trade, all the things like that that our island relies on so strongly, much, much easier. Because otherwise, you have issues of taxation, you have to get your passport, documents ready as you move through Europe. But now, because of the EU, we are still able to go across Europe to run a business, to trade there with supposedly less red tape than we would have otherwise. No one knows what otherwise is. So we don't know whether that's true. But I think that free movement of people in the EU should be allowed and encouraged because it bolsters trade, it makes business easier, it makes travel easier, it helps the sharing of culture between countries, and it fosters an idea of identity that otherwise we might not have. And if we didn't have that, the divisions in Europe could become dangerous. We need to work together.
Thank you, Izzy. Mercedes, would you like to go next?
I'm going to have to remain neutral on this one, simply because free movement may be good for like free trade, less taxation, but it also means that criminals that are born in the EU can therefore move between countries a lot easier than they would if they was going to a different continent. I don't think the free movement in the EU should be as relaxed as it is currently. I think it should be a lot tighter. But other than that, I'm going to have to remain neutral because there are so many positives and negatives on either side. There is no way to come to a decision.
Thank you, Mercedes. Are you ready for your...
Yes. With free travel throughout the EU, it makes it easier for people to move to different places, which does bolster trade, but it can also lead to lots and lots and lots of people, immigrants moving to different places because of certain things in that country. So they can move to different countries because it's cheaper in that country than it is in another country, or they think it's better in this country, and it's easier for people to move around if, like in the EU, it's easier for them to just move around generally. You don't have to have your passport stamped, you don't have to have immigration papers, all sorts of stuff. It's easier, it's less difficult to move around in the EU than it would be in the Americas.
Thank you.
We have the EU. It's easier.
Thank you. So, to quickly sum up, it's a controversial topic because everyone can have strong feelings towards it. Of course, the cultural boundaries, as he said, if we don't allow those cultural boundaries and country boundaries to almost blend slightly, they could become worse and countries could become a bit more hostile due to the lack of mixed cultures and understanding. Also, there's the trouble that criminals from one country may move to another in hiding or to escape, which endangers your own people, which is, something you really don't want to do. Tight security could be an idea if you were going to openly ban within borders, but then it's almost contradicting yourself, saying, well, let's come in, but we're going to make sure everything's secure, which can kind of leave an awkward idea. lots of people immigrating to one country as well, especially if everyone moved to Britain, to a smaller country, there's going to be less room, less jobs, and then people are going to be wanting to think, well, why are they here when I'm a British guy wanting my job? But yeah, there are lots of good and bad ideas about this, and it's pretty hard to take a side. Last question, right? Genetically manipulated organisms or crops, organisms or crops should be available for UK farmers as they are available to US farmers. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Genetically manipulated crops, wheat, barley, etc., etc. Yes, they can be made more useful. You get more produce, you get more bang for your buck effectively, but it's unnatural. You get chemicals, strands, all sorts of stuff that can be harmful to us, people who are eating all this grain and crops, etc., etc. So you're going to develop different. You can get harmful side effects of these crops, which can lead to all sorts of nasty diseases we wouldn't rather know about. And it's just not good for people to have genetically modified crops and stuff. You wouldn't eat it if you knew it was, because if you knew it was bad for you. So then why would you still eat it if you knew it's not necessarily bad for you sometimes, but it still can damage you? So why would you?
Cheers, Ollie. Izzy, what do you have on this idea?
I disagree strongly with your point, Ollie. Human beings have been genetically modifying crops almost as long as human beings have been in existence. It's called selective breeding. Ring any bells? You're altering the genome of another animal by choosing its parents. Choosing, effectively, two different sets of genes, picking out genes that make one animal strong and another animal weak. Controls need to be placed on genetic modification. But let's not get carried away with ourselves. This is no sci-fi, alien glowing jellyfish experiment. The Americas, as you've already pointed out, have allowed genetic modification. And there cannot be that much of a proven risk if a country of that size and that capital has allowed this genetic modification to take place. I think the real problem lies not in the ethics of genetic modification, but rather in the way you label it. I think people should always have a choice whether to consume genetically modified food or whether not to. You should label your tins of food that have been genetically modified. It should be obvious and clear when you are buying these things, but that is not a basis for banning genetic modification entirely. Why would you ban something that is just a quicker, easier, more scientific, and yes, more complicated version of what we've been doing for thousands of years? People are scared of genetic modification, and that fear is the real reason, that it has not been passed as legal in this country yet. And I think with a better understanding and more rigorous and obvious laws regarding genetic modification, they'd be a lot more useful than an outright ban, which helps nobody.
Thank you, Izzy. Mercedes, what do you have on this?
So my only opposition to genetically modified crops is that the manufacturers of these crops have the ability to make the crop not be able to reproduce on its own. So therefore in third world countries, people aren't able to reproduce the crops by themselves. Every year they have to keep buying the crops over and over and over again, meaning they're making less money. My only opposition to this is the manufacturers. If they're going to make genetically modified crops, they should be able to make it so that it can be reproduced every year by the farmer and not by the crop manufacturer.
Thank you. So to quickly sum up, we worked out to be useful and relatively cheap to create, but yet the crops need constant support from the manufacturers, and sadly farmers in third world countries who have these crops won't be able to do that. So it's limiting one country to help another, but it's also a selective breeding. Humans have been doing it a long time, and there's proof of that. I mean, looking at animals, dogs is one, but yeah, also weeds another. yeah, controls need to be put on this, I agree with, because if we start genetically modifying everything, we don't know where we could end, to be honest, and it could almost say that terrible sci-fi reality you spoke about. Yeah, it's an interesting topic like the other two, but it's down to you guys what you think. Yeah, thank you for listening, and hope you enjoyed it, guys.
Thank you ever so much, Homewood Brainstrust team. Can I please get Homewood's junior reading team, please?